Welcome everybody to Advanced Webinars by Hector Garcia. Today is December 5th, 2019, and this is a special episode. Today we'll be talking about importing data into QuickBooks Desktop with Transaction Pro Importer 7.0 by Right Networks. Just so you'll know, fun fact, Right Networks purchased Transaction Pro Importer last year. So now this is a Right Networks property. Transaction Pro Importer is still the same software, works the same way, it's just owned and managed by the great folks of Right Networks. Now we're going to spend about 5 minutes doing quick introductions. Then we'll spend about 5 minutes talking about what are the built-in tools inside QuickBooks Desktop that you can use now to import data, and maybe talk about some of those limitations which will drive you to decide whether you need Transaction Pro Importer to import additional transaction types, additional fields, and some additional functionality that's just not built into QuickBooks Desktop. And that will be about 5 minutes. And then we'll spend about 50 minutes talking about importing data into QuickBooks Desktop, and this will be a 1-hour webinar. Now, there's the link to my YouTube channel, my email, my phone number. If you have any questions, direct inquiries, you can go that route. I also recommend you check out the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, there's tons of content there related to QuickBooks accounting and third-party apps. Advanced Webinars is my brand. It's a platform I'm using to create multiple types of educational and webinar series. For now, we have this QuickBooks Online Advanced Webinar, and I tacked in this QuickBooks Desktop episode in the middle of the schedule. However, this is generally a QuickBooks Online driven training, although today's episode is all desktop, and it's generally 2 hours long, the third Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern. Episodes have been scheduled through April of 2016, and then after April, we're going to start a brand new webinar series, probably different format and probably mostly around QuickBooks Desktop. So this will be a nice introduction to that. We have from time to time special episodes like today's, where we use every other Thursdays, not the third Thursday, and we deep dive into specific apps or specific topics. Today we'll be talking about Transaction Pro Importer. Next week we'll be talking about Invoice Sherpa. Now, advanced webinars are free to watch. We have 200 people logged in right now watching it live. There's no cost for you to watch the free recordings. However, I traditionally in the past made all my content public. These specific webinars, the recordings, the slides, and the additional resources are only available for paid members. So if you need to go back and watch any of the recordings for any of the episodes that we've done, you have to be a paid member, which right now is a $300 a year membership. You go to hectorgarcia.com/advance for that. And we started in April this year. We've done several episodes. Here on the screen, it gives you all the episodes that we've done. These have all been 100-minute deep dives into QuickBooks Online. 2 weeks ago, we covered importing data into QuickBooks Online with the online edition of Transaction Pro Importer. Today will be all QuickBooks Desktop. As I mentioned earlier, next week we'll be doing Invoice Sherpa, managing accounts receivable in QuickBooks Online and Invoice Sherpa. And we have 5 regular episodes scheduled through the year. I'm sure we'll have other special episodes, deep dive into apps later on as well. So let's go right into the topic. Let's talk about the built-in tools inside QuickBooks Desktop for importing. There's essentially 4 built-in tools, and they're in different places in QuickBooks Desktop that you can use. One is called Advanced Excel Import. The other one is called Add Edit Multiple List Entries. The third one is called Batch Enter Transactions, my favorite. And the fourth one is IIF files. Let's talk a little bit about each of them. So Advanced Excel Import allows you to import customers, vendors, items, accounts, and new for QuickBooks Enterprise 2020, vendor items, which is basically a item list that's specific to a vendor, so you can have a different part number and price per vendor. So you can have an item across multiple vendors with different descriptions and different prices. That's only available in QuickBooks Enterprise 2020, only relevant for people using the multiple preferred vendors feature. But the first 4, customer, vendors, items, and accounts, that's the stuff that's been there forever. Now, if you click in the link that's under this slide, and I'm going to show you this real quick. I'm going to go into my folder and show you. If you click on that link, you get this file here, which basically gives you I'm going to get an Excel spreadsheet open here. It allows you to download this Excel spreadsheet, which is basically a template that allows you to import the accounts, the vendors, the customers, and the items using that built-in tool. So it's a great Excel template to start with. If you are going to be using built-in tools, you want to download that Excel import kit. That's that link under that slide. Add, edit multiple list entries. It's really cool because it's all copy and paste based. It allows you to import customers, vendors, and items individually based on item type. You can do service items, inventory items, non-inventory items, and inventory assemblies. But the caveat is you cannot bring the bill of materials into the inventory assemblies. That's just not available. You will need Transaction Pro Importer to do something like that. And the vendor item option that we talked about earlier, that's also available in Add Edit. So Add Edit allows you to import. It also allows you to make edits in an Excel, sort of an Excel spreadsheet type format. The third tool inside QuickBooks Desktop to import data is called Batch Enter. It's only available in the Accountant edition of QuickBooks Desktop and the Enterprise edition of QuickBooks Desktop. It's either one gives you the same exact feature set. It allows you to import checks, deposits, credit card charges and credits on the same form. So credit card charges are positives and credits are negatives. Bills and bill credits. So in the same form, bills are positive number, bill credits are negative numbers. Invoices and credit memos, same concept, all in the same form. Invoices will be positive numbers, credit memos will be negative numbers. Now I love batch enter transactions. I think it was a really huge game changer when that came out in 2013, and then it was upgraded in 2014 with more transaction types. I love it because you can do copy and paste from Excel, so that's awesome. It's really fast. It's actually faster than using a third-party tool for smaller imports. Anything under 1,000 lines, it's probably best to use through Batch Enter. It's just going to be quick and quicker, and it's built in. You don't need a third-party app, so that's awesome. Now there are some cons. There's some limitations. Number one, you cannot import multi-line transactions. So you have an invoice with 2 lines, forget it, can't import. Got a bill with 2 lines, forget it, can't import. You have an invoice with sales tax, forget it, cannot import, right? So it's only for single line imports and no sales tax. It's also really slow and restrictive when you do really large batches, so you kind of have to break them down or just use a third-party tool like TPI for that. There's obviously a limitation of transaction types. We covered all the transaction types, and there's no Excel version of the import, so it can only be copy and paste. And I know some folks might not like the copy and paste, might like working with an Excel file much better. Okay, IIF files. So IIF files is something that's been existing for a while. It's the most expanded feature in terms of importing transactions and list entries into QuickBooks Desktop. You can import almost every transaction type. There's a limited amount of fields you can import. Transaction Pro Importer will give you a lot more fields, but in essence, you can import a lot of things with IIF file, most transaction types, most list types. Most notably, the ones that you cannot import through IIF would be a sales order and an assembly item build. So those 2 things are not available through the IIF import, and those 2 things TPI can do. So if you're considering importing any of those 2, Transaction Pro Importer can do it really well. Sales orders are really critical for people importing e-commerce transactions, that sort of thing. So TPI is a great tool for that. Now, you cannot import sales tax liability, paychecks. So anything with payroll or sales tax basically cannot be imported. And you cannot import it via TPI or IIF. It's just not available, period, anywhere. So sales tax and paycheck data, that all has to be entered manually into QuickBooks. Now, some pros and cons of IIF file. Well, the pro is that it's free, right? It's built in, no need for an app. The cons, there's a lot more contra for the IIF. Number one, there's no error correction or no control. if you screw up an IAF import, you can corrupt the QuickBooks Desktop file. It's really hard to use. It has a really long learning curve. It's taken me years to understand how to use it, and it's unsupported by Intuit. So you call Intuit support saying, I'm trying to do this. They're going to say, whoops, sorry, we don't support it. It's still there, but we just don't support it. And it's hard to know, and that goes with a K, and it's hard to know what imported and what didn't import if there's a partial import. Probably my most frustrating circumstance with IAF is sometimes they'll say import complete, but you don't know if the whole thing happened, if some stuff didn't go through. So that's extremely frustrating. So it's good to have there, but also it has a lot of cons. Now, if you go to my website and you click on that link that's there, you can download IAF templates. You can actually get a template for each type of transaction. I'm going to click on it real quick just so you can get an idea for what that website looks like. So let me minimize this and bring the browser over to the right side. There we go. So that link will take you to my website, where I basically added a link to downloading every single transaction type. So if you want to use import and estimate, you can download the IAF file and then try to figure out how to use it. Again, not very easy, not very friendly working with IAF files, but that's an option. And I don't want to spend any more time talking about IAF files because that's just something I personally don't recommend using unless you know exactly what you're doing. All right, so let's jump right into Transaction Pro Importer for QuickBooks Desktop. Let me start by running the first polling question. This will give me a general idea for where we are. So Transaction Pro Importer, have you heard about it? So just tell us generally, yes, no, or are you an active user? So that will give me a general idea for what the crowd looks like. So have you heard about Transaction Pro Importer, the desktop or the online version, either one? Have you ever used it before? You ever heard about it? Do you know of its existence, or are you a current user? Okay, perfect. So we got about 80% of the votes. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it up for 20 more seconds, and then we'll jump right into the content of that. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the polling question. Thank you for that. Close that. Beautiful. All right, so let's talk about the software itself. I think it's important to know that it is a third-party software. You have to pay for it separately. Transaction Pro Importer, the importer version only. So there is a little program that allows you to import. You can use unlimited QuickBooks files. You can import unlimited line items. That software is, according to the website, $250. But apparently there's a sale of some sort, which looks really good and aggressive through December 30th. So you want to take a look at that. That makes the $249 software go down to $129. That's lifetime. That's not per year. That will work forever. Now that's version 7.0. So when version 8.0 comes out, I'm sure there will be an upgrade fee of some sort. And I'm not sure when that will be and whether you need that or not. I've been using version 6.0 for like 5 years, and then I upgraded to 7.0 2 years ago, and it's really stable software. They also have a version called Importer, Exporter, Deleter that has the 3 functions. You can import, you can export data from QuickBooks into Excel, which is really useful to transfer data across QuickBooks files. We use the software to get data out, and then open the other company file, use the software to get data in. I use this tool to create new QuickBooks files for my customers. And then the deleter function is kind of cool because it allows you to just delete transactions, and there's many circumstances in which you do that. That version that has all 3 is $399, and apparently is on sale for $229 until December 30th. Now, on top of that, Right Networks, my contact over there said, Hector, we'd like to give the people an extra discount, sort of an encouragement to purchase the software, whether they have a client on it or not. Just kind of take advantage of the webinar, take advantage of the new learning, and they created a coupon for me. Just put Hector as the coupon code, and you get, I believe it's 20% off. I tried it. I tried buying one today just to see the coupon code, and it makes the pro version, the one that has everything, $183 for lifetime access. I think that's a heck of a deal. I've in the past have paid more for the software, and my clients have paid more for the software. So I think it's a good deal. If you after this webinar, if you like the software and if you suspect you'll be using it at any point in time during the next year or so, look, you can buy this for really cheap. So that's an option for you. All right. So let's talk about the transaction types. So Transaction Pro Importer can import all the transaction types you have listed here. Plus, in addition, it can do, and I'm doing air quotes, bank statements and credit card statements. So we'll talk about that separately. And also, very important, let me just go back for a second. This is the desktop version. I want to emphasize this enough. This is the desktop version. What you're looking at, pricing, context, what it does, what it doesn't do, it's only desktop. 2 weeks ago, we talked about QuickBooks Online, and Transaction Pro Importer for QuickBooks Online only works with the online version, and that's a monthly fee, and that's a per company fee. Right now, please, through the chat, don't ask me questions about QBO. It's only 100% within the context that we're using QuickBooks Desktop, and it's for QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, just want to clarify that. So anyway, so you can do pretty much every transaction type and every list type except for those sales tax and payroll transactions I mentioned earlier. Everything's going to be covered in that Transaction Pro Importer. You can import anything. And on top of that, you can also import bank statements, and you can also import credit card statements. Okay. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to show you the place you go for support for Transaction Pro Importer. Because it's not like you can call a 1-800 number and say, how do I import a credit card? And they'll walk you through it. That's not how it works. It is a tool for you to import. And there's a great website with a Q&A section where you can find answers. But there's a bit of a medium-sized learning curve to learning how to use the software. Hopefully, this webinar clarifies some of that. All right, let's jump right into the demo. And we'll do a couple of simple ones like an item list and invoices. And then we'll go to more complicated things like importing a bank statement or a journal entry. So let's open up QuickBooks here. There we go. Okay, so here's my QuickBooks. I got QuickBooks Desktop open. Let me go ahead and open Transaction Pro Importer. So you see what that looks like. So it's a little program that loads on the screen. It's going to ask you, the first question that it'll ask you is, hey, would you like to connect Transaction Pro Importer? It says developer, Bay State Consulting. That was the original developer of the software. Now it's Right Networks. And then all you have to do is say yes and continue. And then that would basically authorize QuickBooks and Transaction Pro Importer Desktop to communicate together. So once it's up and running, you're going to see this screen here where you have a couple things you can do. Let me minimize this so we don't get confused. So a couple things we have here. So one is it's going to ask you what kind of file you're using. Are you using a desktop file, an Excel file, or are you using a DSN? I don't cover DSN. That's to connect live databases into Transaction Pro Importer. We'll talk about only Excel import. So we're going to click on File. Then we're going to click on Browse. And then we're going to look for an Excel file that we want to import. Now, for some context, I'm going to go ahead and open this Excel file so you see what it looks like. And what I want to do is I want to import this item list into QuickBooks. So I'm going to import this item list into QuickBooks using Transaction Pro Importer. Now, for some additional context, I'm going to go into my QuickBooks Desktop item list and show you I don't have anything in there, right? I only got this 2 generic ones in there. So I got absolutely no items in there, and I'm going to use Transaction Pro Importer to bring my item. So that's the item list I'm bringing over. So I'll select that item list and click on Open. And that's going to load the Excel file into, whoops, hold on one second. Let me do something here real quick. Where's my import file? Just going to simplify the import process here for a second. And I'm going to open the item list. And I'm going to save it as a CSV file. Okay, that's typically something that I do just to make sure there's not going to be any issue. So I'm going to call this one item list. And there it is. And I'm going to open it in CSV just to make sure that it opens correctly. Okay, there's my item list in CSV file, which is very similar to an Excel file. There we go. So let me click on browse. Let me select my item list in CSV file. And it also works with Excel files. Just in this case, it asked me to update something, so I don't want to get through that right now. So then the next question is this a tab delimited or a comma delimited? So a CSV file typically is a comma delimited, and you select that. And then it's asking you for import type. So what kind of data are we importing here? So I'm going to scroll down for a second and select item list. That should be here somewhere. There we go. Item list. And then there's program options. I'm going to go ahead and click on program options. So I show you exactly how that works. And I click on program options. And then there's 3 tabs. There's basic, advanced, and e-commerce. Okay. For now, I'm not going to do e-commerce because e-commerce is really used when you have to look inside of a matrix and to pick up shipping costs and things that are sort of on the same line. So we're not going to need that feature at all, although it's nice to know that you can actually pick up items from multiple columns rather than rows. So that's kind of interesting. So we're going to go to basic and then go through the options. So one of them is do not update items, do not update customers, do not update vendors. So by default, QuickBooks will always add new customers and TPI will add new customers, new items based on the import, and you can actually pick whether or not you want that. So it's actually useful to go through these import options before you do it. On the advanced, notice that there's some cross-referencing options. So if you want to cross-reference an item with a custom field to do updates, that's also available. That's kind of a really advanced function, and we'll see if any of these things become useful. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. No need to change any option, and then click on next. So then once I click next, it gives me a list of everything that was loaded. Basically, it's basically a quick preview saying, okay, this is how I read, this is how TPI read the data, right? This is how I read the data. You want to just double check, make sure that you have the right file open. Sometimes when you're doing tons of import, you'll pick up the wrong file. That preview is really useful to know what's about to come in. Then I'm going to click on next. Okay. The next question is called mapping. This screen is all about mapping. So what mapping is, all right, the field in QuickBooks has one name. The field in your Excel file has potentially another name. Let me go ahead and open that one so we can sort of contextually understand what's happening in this mapping. So notice that I got my item name here. It's called item. That's the header name. So what I want to do is I want to tell Transaction Pro Importer that my header with the name item is the one that's going to be used for the item name. So I'm going to click on the drop-down menu and then pick their item. Okay. And then the first one always has these weird characters there when it's a CSV file. Ignore that. That's really not that important. The next one is item type. So right here on the item type, this column is called type. So I'm going to go ahead and pick type column here in the drop-down menu of item type, and I'll pick type. And notice that some of these are red and some of these are black. So red means it's a required field and black means it is not. All right, let's say I want to import the description. So where's my description? My description is on the second column called description. So I'm going to come in here and select description. And if you have a really simple spreadsheet with really good naming convention, it becomes really, really easy. Then we have my asset account, my cost of goods sold account, and hopefully my inventory asset account. Okay, that's not here, but I can use a fixed static field for that. Actually, no, that's here. All three of them are here. Okay, there we go. So let's go down to my account, and I got income account. That's going to be under the column account. That's this guy right here. Highlight that yellow so you can see it. Okay, that's my income account. You see it right there. And these are all my income accounts that is being mapped to. My cost of goods sold account, that's right there. So I'm going to click on the drop down and select COGS account. And they got my inventory asset account only for inventory items. Okay. And then select asset account. Okay. So I got these three over here. And then that's how I mapped my income accounts. Let's see what else do I need to map. I can map preferred vendor, right? I do have that in there. I can map my cost, right? So I'm going to look for my cost and I'm going to map my sales price. So it's just a mapping. It's a mapping system. It's a mapping process. If you want to bring those things in, you have to know what is the header name in the Excel file, right? So I'll go ahead and close that to avoid getting confused by that. Let's bring this back into the middle. I got the mapping done. Now what I can do is, if I'm gonna import these transaction types quite a bit using a similar spreadsheet, what I can do is I can save the mapping. So I go to Save As, and then I can call this one item map from whatever, right? From whatever, let's call it Shopify. Let's say I'm importing these things from Shopify, whatever it is. So I have it permanently saved. So if I ever pull up that item list, a similar item list again, I can load the mapping, and then I don't have to do the mapping over again. And as long as the field names, the header names are all the same, that will all work. So the next one, I'm going to click on Next. It gives me a preview of, okay, this is what I'm about to import. And there's going to be some errors, which is fine. And I want to show you the errors, or I hope there's some errors, so I can kind of walk you through the process of errors. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. Then it's going to say, if I'm creating a new item and I don't know the item type, what item type should I use by default? I'll go ahead and click on Other Charge. And then what account should I use by default? I'm going to put here on Categorize Income. And we'll just keep it there simple. So this is if I don't have the item type, which one should I create? So because TPI sometimes have to import and forced create an item in order for it to import a transaction. Right now we're actually importing items, so that doesn't make much sense. But when you're importing an invoice, for example, that's a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Finish. And it says Begin Item Transfer. Yes. We click OK. This is typically the part where I cross my fingers and see what happens. And I'm hoping there's an error so we can walk you through the errors, because that's really important. That's the stuff that is part of the learning process. But it's going to go one by one. It's going to check that it can be imported. Then it's going to import them, and then it'll give me an error log of what it couldn't do. Another note that is important to, while this is loading, to add some comments to this. If you, let me go ahead and click on yes. I'm going to ignore that one for a second. And one of the things that happens is, if you notice, the spreadsheet contains the item name. Let me open it up. So this has the account name as Construction Income : Design Income. Now, if I go into QuickBooks here while this loads, and I'm going to go into my chart of accounts, I'm noticing that I may or may not have that account, but TPI is actually creating it for me. Notice that I had some accounts there with account numbers. That's my original chart of accounts. And then TPI created these accounts for me. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? So it's a good thing because it saves me some time. It's a bad thing because it's modifying my chart of accounts. So you're going to have to make a decision to, do I want this to happen or not? And that's where one of the options, and I'll go back to the options and show you, you can actually choose for it not to do that. So here's a list of everything that was imported. If I click on filter records that didn't import, I click on that, and it tells you everything that it didn't import. And it didn't import maybe because I used the wrong nomenclature, or maybe it doesn't allow you to import those types. You have to do some deeper troubleshooting to get there. But what inventory assembly didn't import. TPI can import inventory assemblies. It just needs more information, basically. And subtotals and groups, those are kind of tricky to get imported there, so I'm missing some information there. So I'm going to click on Close, and then I'm going to go back into my item list and notice that my entire item list was imported. Okay, so that gives you an idea right up front how this works. The item list gets imported quite easily. Let's go to the next one, which is importing an invoice. So I'm going to open up an invoice or a list of invoices so we can see what this looks like. So I'm going to make the font a little bit bigger just so we understand what's going on here. So I basically have this spreadsheet where I took a QuickBooks file, another QuickBooks file, and I exported my list of invoices. Okay, I got my invoice dates, I got my invoice numbers, I have my customer name, I have the item that is being invoiced, I have the description, I have the target account the item points to, I have the class, and I have the dollar amount. So what I do is I'm going to import all of these invoices, and some of these invoices have multiple lines. If you look at this one, for example, this one has like, this one's actually really long. This invoice 1067 has 25 lines. So that one's quite big. Perfect example of something that you prefer to import rather than entering manually. So we're gonna go ahead and import that invoice list. I'm gonna open transaction, Pro Importer. I'm gonna click on browse. Let me go ahead and save this as a CSV file. You don't have to save it as a CSV file. I like doing it just because it's a cleaner and faster import. So I'm gonna save it as a CSV file. I'm gonna go ahead and open and select that CSV file. Click on open, and then I'm gonna pick field, comma, separated. CSV means comma separated file, so that means that's always gonna be that. And then on the import type, I'm gonna change that over to invoice. So I got invoice. I'm gonna select invoice right there, and then on the program options, if you remember earlier, QuickBooks created those accounts automatically. See, do not add new accounts. So if I had selected do not add new accounts on my previous import, that it would have given me an error, right? So something to consider there. So for now, I'm just gonna let it import just so it goes through. So I'm gonna click on next. It gives me a preview of what the file looks like. Again, so you are making sure you're on the right file. Then we click on next. Then it says the same thing. Hey, this mapping is not set up. Can you map this for me? Okay, so let's start. So my customer's name, which is my first line here, the title of this header is called name, right? So I'm gonna map name, this column D, name, to customer. So I click on the drop-down menu and then select name. Then transaction date. Okay, that's gonna be column B, which is just called date. Click on the drop-down and click on date. Then we got reference number, which is gonna be invoice number, which this one is called num. So I'm gonna click on the drop-down menu and then click on num. And then let's see what else we got here. We got the item name. That's the next one. It's called item. So I'm gonna come down here, come down and go to item, click on the drop-down and select item. And then I'm gonna go to description, which is called memo. So I'm gonna select description, which is called memo. And then doesn't look like I have quantities here. So I'm gonna go straight to total amount here under credit. So I'm gonna go down to amount. Here under price, I'm gonna select credit. And I think that's it. Do I have to bring anything else? Oh, AR account, this is really cool. So if you have multiple accounts receivable accounts in QuickBooks Desktop, you can select which accounts receivable account it belongs to. And it doesn't look like I have anything else. Oh, I got the class, so that's important. Let me bring class over as well. Class. And I want to show you this static formula, how this works. So you can have data in your spreadsheet missing, but you can force it in there with the static formula. So for example, I'm going to go down to, let's see what else. What can I add here? Let's see, we got FOB, service date. Let's see, memo. Okay, so I'm going to put here imported on 12/05/2019 by Hector. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a static formula, and then basically that means whatever I type in there, every single transaction gets that. Let's also do terms. So let me open up an invoice real quick in QuickBooks. Let's see what terms I have here. So I got terms net 60. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type net 60 on the terms, and so everything gets net 60 terms. So I'm gonna go into terms, and I'll type here net 60. So I hope you can see the difference between using the drop down and picking a field from the spreadsheet versus using a static value or formula. Okay, then I'm gonna click on save as, save my mapping as invoices from PayPal, whatever it is, like whatever I'm getting the information from, I'm gonna save the mapping. So next time I pull up a similar spreadsheet, I can pull up my my mapping. And I'm going to click on next, and it's processing 52 lines. So none of these customers are in QuickBooks, by the way. So I'm going to go into customers so you can see it's actually importing right now. So we may see them pop in as it comes in. But if you look at my customer list is blank. Once this import comes in, all these customers are going to be created. So it's up to you, right? So do you want to create the customer, or do you want to force QuickBooks to find the correct customer with TPI? Do you have to play with the spreadsheet to make sure that the customer names match? That's going to be up to you on how you manage that. Okay. So notice I have no customers in QuickBooks, and once I do the import, all these customers are going to be created automatically. So I'm going to click on finish, okay, and then we're going to let TPI do its magic. And if you notice on the left hand side, all these customers are being created on the fly as the invoices are being created as well. I'll take advantage and run a quick polling question here. So how's the pace so far? Too fast, too slow, just right? And while the import happens, the import will take, this is 150 lines of invoices. That takes about 2 minutes or so. It's almost done. But if you guys can answer that polling question, give me a general idea how you feel about the pace of the webinar itself. And go ahead and ask all your questions in the Zoom chat box. We actually have a good friend of mine, Michelle Harris from Right Networks, from Transaction Pro Importer, who's the most technical person over there that can answer some questions. Somebody's asking, can it transfer payroll information? The answer is no. QuickBooks does not allow third-party software to affect payroll. You can import timesheets, but you cannot import paychecks. All right, let me go ahead and click on OK. And let's see, let me go ahead and end the poll. Thank you very much. I'm going to share the results real quick just because I just find it funny. It's always like 95% of people say you're fine, and there's always a group of people that think we're too slow and too fast, and it's just impossible to satisfy everybody. So I just find that to be interesting. I'll click on stop sharing. So I got a list of all the things that were imported. There's a checkbox that says filter the things that didn't import. I click on the checkbox. It looks like I had no issue, which is great. Love that. So there's no issue there was no issues, everything imported. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on close. And then I'm going to go into QuickBooks. So check out QuickBooks. I'm going to go into transactions. Look at these were all the invoices that were created. Okay, all the invoices were created. I'm going to click on that one that was really long, 1067 right here. And notice all my 13 lines or whatever it was, everything got imported with descriptions, with classes. Check out the terms. The terms came in beautifully. Check out imported on. The text down here in the bottom, that came in beautifully. Everything worked out really well. I mean, all the fields are available for import. I can pick the due date. I can pick the rep, ship via FOB. All those things would have to be mapped beforehand in order for you to be able to import them. So it's a really quick, easy illustration on how to import invoices using TPI. All right, let's do the same thing with bills. Bills are going to be a little bit trickier, but I think it's important to mention them. Let me go ahead and close this spreadsheet, and let's open bills. And as you can tell, I got experience with this software. I've been using it for about 7 years. I would say the biggest, best ROI I ever gotten out of any software I have ever purchased ever has been this, because any import job that I've ever done has been at least $500 or $600, and it's a $200 software. So it's amazing. I mean, it's really, really great. Anyway, so to import bills, and bills get a little bit tricky. To import bills, you have to have a bill number. You have to have an invoice number or a bill number. So that gets just really, really tricky. And on this import I created, there wasn't one. So you have to just make sure that all these transactions are separated by their bill number. So I'm just kind of creating bill numbers here, and I'm making sure that all the lines that go together, let me zoom this in a little bit so you can make sure this is really important stuff. You make sure that all the lines that go together have the same bill number. So this is bill number 7, bill number 8, bill number 9. But for example, these two are two lines from a single bill. So I want to make sure that these two get the same bill number. And that's how Transaction Pro Importer knows that the transactions are related together. Because if they don't have the same bill number or the same reference number, it's going to import them as two separate lines. So I'm making sure that every one of these bills, especially the ones that are going to have 2 lines, 3 lines, whatever, they have the same bill number. So I'm going to delete that. That's probably good enough. Let me keep that one that has 4 lines just for illustration. And we got this last one with 4 lines. So let's do 20, 20. All right. So I got a bunch of, let me zoom this out a little bit. So I have a whole bunch of bills on this spreadsheet. The way they're grouped together is by bill number and the vendor name. And that's how QuickBooks knows what to do with it. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and click on Transaction Pro Importer. Let me save this as a CSV file. Notice that there's a pattern there. I do this all the time. Save it as a CSV file. And I'm going to click on Save. Go to Browse. Select my bill CSV file. Click on Open. Then I'm going to go to Import Type. I'm going to now change this to Bill, right? Because I'm importing bills. Importing bills. Click on Next. Next. Now to create my mapping file. So my vendor name, it's under source name. So I'm going to go to Import, select source name. Reference number, that's going to be this column here called Invoice. So I'm going to click on the drop down and do Invoice. Date is going to be date. So that one's pretty straightforward. And then memo, I'll put here memo. And then I don't have any addresses, so we can skip that. We got expense account. So we'll select our expense account. Let's say we're going to go here under account. And expense amount, that's going to be here under debit. So expense amount is called debit. Is there a class here? Yes, there's a class. Beautiful. So let's pick the class. So we'll do class. And so this example is going to be with expense accounts rather than items. So you can do either expense accounts or items. Typically, I don't recommend doing both. So just do all the ones that have expenses first and all the ones that have items second, but technically you could do them both at the same time, right? See what else we got. Items payable. If I don't put anything under AP account, it'll go to the default accounts payable account. All right, that should be good enough. Here, I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And here's a preview of what everything's going to look like. Then I click on Next, Finish, OK. And let's open up QuickBooks. Let's go to our vendor list. See if we can catch it before they start being imported. And I'm only going to be covering importing. I won't be covering exporting. Exporting is really straightforward. I don't think there's a need to do that. Maybe at some point in time in the future, I'll build a whole course around this. But we'll see. For now, it's just to kind of see that process. Okay, so I got my list of things that were imported. I clicked on show me the things that they're in import, and it's a blank. That's beautiful. And then I'm going to click on close. Perfect. So now look at all the bills that were imported. So check it out. Let me double click on bill 20, which had 4 lines. And there it is. There's my 4 lines. You can see it right there. Very clear. There's my 4 lines. There's the class. There's the dollar amount. And there's the memo for each. So you can see it's really, really cool. Really wonderful. It works really seamless. I know I'm making it a bit more. I know I'm making it like it seems easy, but it is after you get some practice. So it's just something to get working. And if you are going to be doing this for a client, I know most of the people here are accountants and or consultants, you definitely want to try it first, right? Get your own spreadsheet, try it in a demo file, go over the recording, and then kind of try it on your own, because you kind of want to go through the errors, you want to go through the little issues here and there, just so you have experience doing this, because doing this in front of a customer with a bunch of errors could become a little bit frustrating, but it's part of the process. Like God knows how many errors I've gone through trying to import data. I mean, it's part of the growing pains of this. All right, let's do a journal entry. Let me double click here and just show you real quick. So let's say I got this journal entry right here. Okay, I got a journal entry that's balanced. It's in Excel. Maybe I got this from my payroll company. Maybe I built it on my own. I mean, there's all sorts of potential ways that you got a journal entry, but I happen to have this journal entry in Excel, and let me save this as a CSV file, and we're going to import the journal entry. I'll show you what that would look like if we're importing a journal entry. I do that quite a bit, so it's a good one to showcase. So let me click on Browse here on TPI. I'm going to go ahead and click on Browse, select my journal entry CSV file, click on Open, then import type. I'm going to go down and find journal entry. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next, and then this is what it looks like. Now for journal entries, you want to make sure that all these account names are in fact in your QuickBooks file. Otherwise, TPI will create them as expenses, right? So and you can let that happen and then change the type afterwards, but you want to make sure that maps to your current chart of accounts. So I'm going to click on Next, and then reference number. So let me open that again. I don't think I have a reference number on this one. Let me go to Journal. I don't have a reference number on this journal entry, so I'm going to give it its own reference number. So I'm going to call it GJE 120519-HG or whatever. I'll take the HG out just in case. Then transaction date, that's not there, so I'll type that in there, 12/05/2019. This is nice because I'm showing you how the static value works. Then here's my account, so they select account, then debit and credit. There we go. So I got debit, credit. So I'm doing all my mapping here. Then I have memo. And then if you have a name or a class, or is it billable or not, that can also be imported, but that's not on my spreadsheet. So once I'm done with the mapping, I click on Next. And account doesn't exist. Okay, so notice that for journal entries specifically, they're going to require that these expense accounts exist in QuickBooks. So let me create them real quick. That's what I wanted. I want to see some error messages so we know exactly how to handle these. So let's go into my chart of accounts and let's create the accounts. So one of them is called health insurance expense. So let's create that. Health insurance expense. And of course, if that already exists in your chart of accounts and has a different name, you have to modify your Excel file. I mean, really, there's nothing else you can do about that. And let's do payroll expenses. And the next one's called, so that one's already there. Let's do payroll expense, just like that. And then I'll change it on the Excel file. And then the next one's called payroll liabilities. Let's make that an other current liability. So payroll liabilities. Okay, I'm going to do it singular just in case. Okay, then do next. And the next one's payroll taxes. Payroll taxes. Do expense, and then the last one will be workers' comp. Workers' comp. Yep, got it. Save and close. So now they're all in my chart of accounts, so I shouldn't get that error anymore. Let me just go back and open up that spreadsheet real quick, and I had changed the name of payroll liability as a singular and payroll expense as a singular. Okay, just to make sure it maps. Okay, so hopefully, crossing my fingers that will work. So I'll save that, go to the process again. Let's go back. Open the file again. Journal entry, open. Next. Next. Mapping works the same. Next. Let's see what happened here. Account doesn't exist. I'm curious about this. Let me turn off the account numbers here for a second because that might be causing an issue. Let me see. Health insurance expense. Account doesn't exist in QuickBooks. Beg to differ. They are there. Let me try again. All right. I don't know if I want to go through troubleshooting this. Not sure if I made an error somewhere, but generally that should just work. But if I can somehow come up with it, let me see. Let me start over here. I'm going to browse it again because I just turned off the account numbers. So let's go back. Next, next. Okay, I got account. And next. Yes. All right, I'm going to try something a little bit different and turn the account numbers back on. And I'm going to give these account numbers. So let me open up my spreadsheet. Not going to give up on this one. So as a matter of fact, there should be some value here on seeing these errors live. So let's do payroll taxes. So I'm going to give this a 5160, and then I'm going to use the account number instead. 5160. And then health insurance. Okay, I'm going to edit that one. I'm going to give it a different name, 5162. And this will be 5162. And then let me do workers' comp. I'm going to click on that and do 5163. And I'm going to put 5163. And then payroll expense. Okay. So this would be 5100, and I'll make this one 5100. So what I'm doing is I'm using account numbers instead, just in case I'm missing a step here somewhere. I know this will work too. Let's see. And we'll call this one 2150. All right, let's see if we can get this working with the account numbers. And here under, just put regular number here, although it should be no difference. Save that, close it. Let's open TPI now and cross our fingers. We're doing so well. All right, so browse, open up the CSV file, import type, journal entry. See the options. Let me see if I'm messing something up in the options here. No, cross-reference description of the account name. No, that's not right. Journal entries, specify single. No, we're good. None of the options should have been tweaked there. So I'm going to go to next. That should be fine. And then I got account. That should be fine. Debit, credit memo. All that stuff should be fine. So let me click on next. And then next. Next. Okay. Okay, so that won't work. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Maybe I was misspelling one of the names and it was screwing me up, but account numbers are also an option. So let me go into journal entries and make sure that we can see the journal entry there. There it is. Okay, so there's my journal entry. You can use account numbers or account names. Again, I don't know why it didn't work the first time, but that's okay. Hope you forgive me. All right, so that's the journal entry. Let's do, and we are gonna go a bit over the hour, so I hope you're okay with that. Maybe 10 minutes extra, right? I mean, I'm not in a hurry, so I got more stuff to show you guys. So I'm gonna import bank statements. So this one's actually kind of interesting. So I'm gonna open up a bank statement just so you can see what it looks like. So I downloaded this straight this was straight from the website, right? So I got transaction, debit, credit, whatever that means. That's probably not even valuable to Transaction Pro Importer. I have a date here. I have a description. I have an amount. Then I have a type, which again has no value. And then I have a transaction number. So typically what I do is, because QuickBooks is limited to only like 41 characters for names, I'm going to create a new column here. And I'm going to call this one payee. And then what I'll do is I'm only going to pick up the first 40 characters from this. So I'm going to hit equals and put left. And I'm sorry, I'm doing an Excel class at the moment, but this is just the realities of importing data. You have to finagle with the Excel file, prepare it before you move in. And I'll press enter. So that way, basically, I'm limiting this to the name. I'm also going to remove all the... Let me do copy and paste values. And I'm going to remove all the columns, because you cannot have columns in the names in vendor names in QuickBooks, only on customer. So this is exactly what's going to be imported as the vendor's name. I can do some additional cleanup if I want to. I mean, I can clean up the vendor names. I can do all that stuff in Excel. And I have some videos in YouTube that explain how I do that and why and all that stuff. But for now, that's how I'm gonna bring it in, or exactly how it came to the bank. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that, close it, and then in Transaction Pro Importer, let me also go into QuickBooks real quick, go into the chart of accounts, open up the check register. So I wanna make sure you know this is a completely blank check register, okay? And this checking account is called Banks. Easy, right? It's just called Banks. So let me change the name and just put Chase. That'd be easier to see. So my checking account is called Chase, and I'm gonna bring everything into here. So let's go to TPI, let's go to Browse, let's pick up that bank statement. Just open that, let me open that up again. Okay, File, Save As, let's call it CSV. We'll do bank 120519. Give it a name. Close that. All right. So I'm going to pick up my CSV file that I exported from the bank, and I'm going to pick import type. I'm going to pick bank statement. Then I'm going to click on next. And this is a lot trickier because I don't have any expense categories and income categories in here, right? So we're going to go through the process of how this works. Then I'm going to click on next. So bank account, I'm going to type here Chase. That's going to be handwritten because that's a static formula. Transaction date, that's here under date. Payee is that new field I created called payee. The original bank memo is going to be under description. That's going to go into memo. There's no classes. I can add a fixed class if I want to. Do here new construction. So everything will go under new construction. And then the account. So I don't have one yet. And then the amount, I do have amount. So for the account, I'm going to use a generic account. Let me go into chart of accounts. Do I have it on categorized? Yes, I do. So I'm going to use this account here called on categorized expenses to categorize everything. So I'll just pick the account number there, and I'll put it into TPI. So I'm going to tell it, look, put everything on categorized expenses. I'll recategorize it later. Or you can go into your spreadsheet, select your categories, and select that. Either way, it will work for you. So I'm going to click on next. So there's an error. The payee is a maximum of 31 characters, not 41 characters. So that's going to require me to go back into the CSV file and do that again, do the cleanup of the vendor names again. So let's go back into that. By the way, I love these things. I really do. I'm weird like that. I love errors. I love troubleshooting. I love all this stuff. All right, so let's do left, and let's do left of D1. Actually, let me make the font bigger because some people like to see how that formula works. So I'm going to do equals left of D1, and I only want 31 characters. What I'll also do is I'll do trim of that to get rid of all the excess spaces. Okay, so, and that wasn't D1, that should have been D2. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna click and drag that down, that's smaller, and then do a copy and paste special, find and replace the colon with a space. There you go. Perfect. So now I got all these are going to be my payee names. Perfect. So I'm going to click on save. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I have a video on YouTube where I explain how I clean up these things, kind of slow down, and it's more of an Excel process. It's really, really valuable that you know Excel to clean up these things before you import. So it's kind of fundamental. It absolutely is. All right, so let me go to next, and then here's what it looks like. Click on next. Okay, let's do the mapping again. So this was called Chase. The date is on the date column. Payee, we call the payee. That's the cleaned up version of the payee. Account. What was the account number for the uncategorized? Okay, it was 69800 is the one we were going to use. So 69800 amount, that's here under amount, and then memo would be the description. And then we said we're going to put this under the new construction class. Perfect. So I'm bringing in the bank statement in this case. I'm going to click on save. Yes. Here's a preview of what it looks like. I'm going to open up the check register because it's fun to see them come in. I'm going to click on next, finish, go. And then you should start seeing all these things, all these transactions being popped up into the check register. Okay. How cool is that? All right, almost there. Okay, should be done. Perfect. So there's a list of everything that got imported. Close that. And let me go into my balance sheet. So we can see that our Chase account was imported and there's a balance there, right? So whatever net balance of those transactions are there, double click on that. And there's all my transactions. Everything went into uncategorized. And if you're an accountant, you know that the next step would be to go to accountant, client data review, reclassify transactions, and pick anything that's sitting there under uncategorized, and then you can sit there and reclassify them however you want, right? So if you're an accountant, you know this tool, and this tool is absolutely amazing, and that allows you to go from uncategorized to something else. But if you don't want to do uncategorized and then reclassify, then all you would have to do is make sure that you, in your spreadsheet, so here's my bank or credit card import, whatever I'm doing, that you add a column for account and you type in all your account names, right, that you want to classify prior to import. And that will make sense because I'm going to do one more. I'm going to import a credit card. So I'm going to show you this one that I have here. So I have a credit card that I imported. Okay. This credit card has multiple sub-accounts. Look at these are all the sub-accounts. Here's the transaction date. I'll delete post date. I don't need this. Here's my description, a category. This might or might not be in my chart of accounts, but we'll let it import, no problem. I'll delete type because that really has no value. And let's see if there's any blanks. Okay, so we'll put here Chase on this one because what I want is the payments to hit my Chase account. As you can see here, payments will hit my Chase account. And then this will go Chase. Okay, so I got categories and everything and the payments. So I'm good to go. I got positive amount. I got negative amounts for charges, positive amounts for credits. I can actually import this. I'm going to click on save. Let's open up QuickBooks real quick. Okay, I don't have any credit cards in my balance sheet, just to show you that. Then I'm going to go to TPI, go to Browse, pick up my Chase download, go to Open, And this is going to be awesome. You're going to love this. I'm going to select credit card charge. Click next. Okay, it's a preview of what it looks like. Okay, and then I'll do my mapping. Create account name. So I'm going to call it card because it's going to all go to sub accounts. Payee, that's going to be here under description. Transaction date is transaction date. That one's obvious. Reference number. There's no reference numbers on this, so I can just put, I'm going to put a blank here, just put a hyphen or something. Okay, hyphen reference number. Memo is going to be description as well. Let's go down here. We got expense account. That's going to be here under category. Expense amount is going to be amount. And I think an expense memo, we'll put here memo. Okay, I think that should do it. That should be good. Let me just do description because I don't think we have anything on the memo. So I'll just do description there. And then I'll click on next. It's 194 transactions. Here's a list of everything that's going to get imported. And the categories, memos, amounts, everything. Click on next. Finish. Okay. And then just let it go through. All right, while this happens, let me see if there's any questions worth responding here. Let's see. I think Michelle's responding most of them, so thank you for responding those questions. Somebody saying Transaction Pro Importer, is that one license per computer? Yeah, if you're going to have two people working with Transaction Pro Importer in your office, you need to purchase 2 licenses. So somebody else is asking, would you use this feature rather than bank feeds? That's a good question. So I actually like bank feeds because of automatic categorization. But if my spreadsheets contain categories, so let me open that again. Let me go to open it up so you can see what this looks like. So if my spreadsheet, right here, if my spreadsheet contains categories, I would use TPI. I mean, that's really the difference between using bank feeds or using TPI. If you're comparing the two, bank feeds will attach the category to the payee name based on the naming rules. But if you actually already have an expense category in the spreadsheet, for example, I'll give you a classic example. I have clients that want me to do their books for all of last year, and I give them a quote. Let's say the quote is $2,000, and I say, oh, I can't afford that. And I say, okay, I'll charge you $500, but you will categorize them. So basically what I do is I give them the spreadsheet, I join all the credit cards, all the banks, everything all in one big spreadsheet, and I tell them which categories to use. I have the customer fill in the category in Excel, then I'll import it into QuickBooks and everything gets automatically done. So that's a use case for why I would use TPI instead of bank feeds, because I already got the categories in Excel, right? So just a thought around that, because I get that question all the time, and does it make sense or not? So a couple other things to make sure that you do. I would probably clean this up and get rid of all these things, right? Like the toast prefix and whatever that is prefix. So I would probably clean up the vendors, kind of the way you're seeing it here, prior to import. That's something that I would do. Also, to prevent duplicate vendors from being created, I would probably take this database, sort it by name, and I would probably make sure that there aren't duplicates. See, right now Amazon is being duplicated. So I probably would have cleaned up one and then sort of copy and paste it down. Cleaned up one, copy and paste it down, because otherwise you're going to notice that this is also Amazon. So you notice that you will notice it's going to happen right when it comes in. There's going to be quite a bit. Duplicate vendors, and that's always the potential drawback of not cleaning up the vendors beforehand. So I would recommend that you do that and prevent duplicate vendors. I'm going to click OK. And here's, let me see what happened. What was the error here? Okay, so I got some sort of error. Let's read the error. Okay, give me a second. Let me troubleshoot this error. Let me save the error log into the desktop so I can read the error log. Sure, I did something wrong here. Transaction, let me see. There was an error saving. Transaction must be a positive number. Okay, that makes tons of sense. Okay, so I should have done positive number instead. Whoops, that was my fault. Okay, my fault was because I used credit card charge instead of credit card statement. I noticed what I did now. So let me try that again, do credit card statement. And also for the sake of time, let me go ahead and make this a little bit shorter too. So I'm gonna make this a little bit shorter, maybe limit it to 30 transactions instead. Okay, just so we can do this a bit faster. And save as, let's call it chase card. Okay, and then go back, and this was the error. So I picked credit card charge, and if I pick credit card charge, that should be a positive. So it should be credit card statement. Now, before people start logging out, because I know some people start logging out after an hour, let me run the last polling question, and this will be the last example that I'll do. And then once I do that example, we'll wrap it up. I'm going to show you the coupon code again and the website if you want to purchase it at the discount that Right Networks gave us. So that's actually really important. And let me go ahead and follow the process. So while you do that polling question, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did before, do the mapping, and finish the import. Okay, so I'm doing the exact same thing as I did before. I'm just putting the same information here. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going through the import process, and as you can tell, you can look at the balance sheet. You can kind of see it live. You see how it starts updating all the balances of all those accounts. So something good to kind of see. So go ahead and answer the last polling question, whether the app is useful for you, if you're going to start using it or not. And right when this import is finished, I'll do the last couple of slides. Really important information, especially if you want to see that coupon code again, and we'll wrap it up. So I wanted to stay about an hour, but hey, what can you do? And also, my good friend Michelle, who leads the support team over at Right Networks and Transaction Pro Importer, their email is support@transactionpro.com. So if you have any questions that weren't answered through the process here, maybe, hey, can this be imported? Can this be imported? Or you're having issues with the software, whatever, email support@transactionproimporter.com. That's a great option there. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the slide too, so we have it up there. I'm also going to show you a couple of really, really valuable links and really valuable resources, actually extremely valuable resources. You're going to see it in a second, some templates and things like that are going to be useful for you when you're doing import. So just stay tuned, maybe 5 more minutes, and you'll see how that works. So as you see, that's 194 transactions being imported within minutes. Okay, I'm going to click OK. And there we go. No errors. Beautiful. And as you can notice, in my balance sheet, every one of these credit cards, these are all sort of sub-accounts. I can double click on each one and see all the transactions that were imported. Look at this. All the transactions were imported. All the transactions were imported. So if I run a profit and loss of last month, and this didn't have any information then, look, check it out. All my transactions were imported. Now, these were the categories that came from the credit card company, right? Maybe you want to change those in the spreadsheet, clean them up, use the correct accounts that you want to use. But look, that's 194 transactions that were imported within minutes. So can you imagine doing this for a whole year's worth of transactions, a whole year's worth of transactions? I mean, that's pretty amazing. So let me go ahead and end the polling question. Thank you for that. And it looks like, everyone's satisfied with the webinar overall, and it's been useful for you guys. So hopefully those were really good examples that will be useful for you. Let me go over the last couple of slides. So again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a sale through December 30th. It's a really good deal. It lowers it from $250 to $129 on the import only tool, and from $399 to $229 on the Pro tool. And if you purchase by December 9th and use the coupon code Hector, you get an additional 20 on top of the current coupon. So I mean, you really can't go wrong with this. To be honest, you look even at the competitors, Z-Axis or Sassant Desktop, I don't think none of them really come close to pricing. I mean, these guys really went all out with pricing, because Sassant, you have to pay per year, and Zed, I haven't used Zed in 7 years. I don't even know what the pricing is like now. I mean, if you're going to get an importing software, this is it. This is the time. This is the deal. Anyway, let's go through the resources. So important. Number one, data dictionary. This will become your best friend. I'm going to show you what this looks like. So the data dictionary, which is the first link in there, it's a spreadsheet. Hold on a second. I lost my mouse. Give me a second. I lost my mouse for a second. So the data dictionary is going to be this guy here. Let me open it up here. Where is it? Okay. Data dictionary. That's our first link on the slides. And data dictionary is basically a spreadsheet that shows me every single transaction type, every single field, and some additional notes if there's some sort of caveats, and whether the field is required, type of field, and character length limit. This is your Bible. When a customer comes to you and says, I'm trying to import XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Okay, open up this thing and say, what fields do you want to import? What transaction type? So you pick the transaction type. Somebody wants to bring purchase orders. Okay, we'll pick the purchase order here and say, this is what I want to bring in. Click OK. And then we see all the fields. And then we can kind of take a look at our customer spreadsheet, compare it against the data dictionary, and see what can and cannot import. You can set the expectation up front of what the software can't or can't do. Most powerful tool out there for people that are importing. Download that data dictionary. That is your best friend. There's a couple of cool notes here letting you know what can be done, what are the common errors, what are the caveats when trying to import, one thing one way or the other. And there's tons of little caveats when it comes to that. The other resource here that we want to look at is the sample import file. That's that second link that's there, the sample import file. So let me show you what that looks like. And that's also gold, actually pure gold, unadulterated gold, unprocessed, beautiful gold. This right here is a tab. It's a tab for every single transaction type. If you see in the bottom, every single transaction type, credit card, statement, credit memo, customer list, deposit, employee list, whatever. Every single transaction type the Transaction Pro importer can do, there's basically a sample for you to see exactly what the data should look like. Send it to your client and say, oh, you want me to import your customers? Sure. Make sure it looks like this. Make sure it's got these fields. If you want a field that's not here, it cannot be done, period. Done, right? So this is a great tool to have. Again, it's similar to a data dictionary. It's just laid out a little bit different. Great tool to have and to know what are the required fields and what fields are available for import and kind of what the data looks like. So those two things are gold, the data dictionary and the sample import files. There's the link on the spreadsheet. And the last one is the support website. Support website is also wonderful. Again, you're not going to call 1-800-IMPORT and someone will walk you through the import. That's not how it works. As a matter of fact, I actually make a really nice living charging my clients on showing them how to import stuff and how to use the software, because it does take some experience, right, to not spend hours and hours doing this. So if you want to search any of these things, just type data dictionary here. the data dictionary that's here, the sample files, everything is here in the support website. So you can go to any of these things. Let's go here to desktop, and here's automate desktop export. So here's something that explains, can you automate exports? It says here no, but it can do some batching. So you go to every one of these things, and all the options, explaining to you what every option means, why you would use it. I mean, there's just tons of great content. Here's some illustrated mapping of what every screen looks like and what would be affected on it. I mean, it's a great companion, and by far, I don't think any other software company has gone in depth enough as TPI has done, building resources for the people that want to import. Thank you very much. Upcoming episodes next week, we'll be doing another special episode on a third-party app called Invoice Sherpa, which allows you to automate your receivables. You're going to love it. It's really, really cool. Automatically send reminders to customers that are behind based on different rules you can set. Then on the 19th, we're doing deep dive on QuickBooks Online Payroll. Then we're going to go to January to advanced user permissions and some additional custom reporting, custom field tips. On February, we're doing e-commerce. I have a guest coming on who's an e-commerce expert for QBO. She's going to add some color commentary to how we manage e-commerce. On March, we're doing retail and restaurant. And on April, the series will end, and we'll do some post-tax season tips and tricks. Basically, everything that makes your life easier, we're going to be covering that day. If you have any questions or comments, email me at hector@garciacpa.com. And if you want to watch the recording, become a member, hectorgarcia.com/advance. Thank you for attending advanced webinars. Everybody have a wonderful day.